There's beauty in imperfection. A poor self-image is the magnifying glass that can transform a trivial mistake or an imperfection into an overwhelming symbol of personal defeat. Every form, not being the whole, must, of necessity, be imperfect. Less than the whole, it cannot be identical with the whole, and being less than the whole and, therefore, imperfect by itself, it shows imperfection as evil, and only the totality of a universe can mirror the image of God. Imperfection is the new perfection. The power of doing anything with quickness is always prized much by the possessor, and often without any attention to the imperfection of the performance. I can deal with imperfection, but I can't deal with people who lie to themselves and lie to the world to make the world feel better. The flaw in, say, austerity, is that its success is predicated on the relative exactitude of math rather than the shifting, liquid imperfection of people's lives. Both our senses and our passions are a supply to the imperfection of our nature, thus they show that we are such sort of creatures as to stand in need of those helps which higher orders of creatures do not. Monsters are the patron saints of imperfection. To bear with patience wrongs done to oneself is a mark of perfection, but to bear with patience wrongs done to someone else is a mark of imperfection and even of actual sin. As we lay hold upon the truth of God, its influence must affect us. It must elevate us. It must remove from us every imperfection. On the contrary, I'm a strong believer in the necessity of imperfection coming into the film. I don't want to call myself a perfectionist, because perfection is imperfection. Evil is only imperfection, that which is not complete, which is becoming, but has not yet found its end. With girls, I feel like there's an impulse to try to make it look better or neater or more perfect, and when I watch theater, television, movies, it's always the imperfection I'm always more attracted to. I don't love Photoshop, I like imperfection. It doesn't mean ugly. I love a girl with a gap between her teeth, versus perfect white veneers. Perfection is just boring. Perfect is what's natural or real, that is beauty. I feel like the live record thing is something that I've been getting used to as the years go by, and with this being my second one, I'm continuing to learn what works and what doesn't work. A live record is an example of that authenticity and that realness that you find in imperfection, and you can hear that in this record. Even imperfection itself may have its ideal or perfect state. It's not about finding relevance or perfection or imperfection in objects, but it's that you can accept yourself and then go out and accept others. I like imperfection. Successful design is not the achievement of perfection but the minimization and accommodation of imperfection. I think that's the most beautiful thing about being confident, just loving yourself, not caring what everybody else thinks. Because you could be Mother Teresa, and people are still going to try to find some imperfection. Mothers subject their daughters to a level of scrutiny people usually reserve for themselves. A mother's gaze is like a magnifying glass held between the sun's rays and kindling. It concentrates the rays of imperfection on her daughter's yearning for approval. The result can be a conflagration, whoosh. Persuade thyself that imperfection and inconvenience are the natural lot of mortals, and there will be no room for discontent, neither for despair. The fastest way to break the cycle of perfectionism and become a fearless mother is to give up the idea of doing it perfectly, indeed to embrace uncertainty and imperfection. Therefore it does not help to sneer at the imperfection of today's reality or to preach absolutes as a daily agenda. I love everything about my body. Every bit of it, the cellulite, the stretch marks, everything that I thought at one point was an imperfection, I now realize is everything that makes me unique. Perfection itself is imperfection. It is only imperfection that complains of what is imperfect. The more perfect we are, the more gentle and quiet we become towards the defects of others. I think every single imperfection adds to your beauty. I'd rather be imperfect than perfect. There's always room out there for the hand-drawn image. I personally like the imperfection of hand drawing as opposed to the slick look of computer animation. But you can do good stuff either way. The Pixar movies are amazing in what they do, but there's plenty of independent animators who are doing really amazing things as well. There is nothing in machinery, there is nothing in embankments and railways and iron bridges and engineering devices to oblige them to be ugly. Ugliness is the measure of imperfection. The detail adds an element of unexpected something. All fiction is false. What makes it convincing is that it runs alongside the truth. The real world has lots of incidental details, so a painting also has to have that element of imperfection and irregularity, those incidental details. I find beauty in imperfection. Being a parent is such a difficult business. You don't always get things right. And also, you don't want to be a perfect parent. You need people to be human, and part of it is imperfection. Imperfection is relatable. It belongs to the imperfection of everything human that man can only attain his desire by passing through its opposite. If someone is too perfect, they won't look good. Imperfection is important. As a real person, he wouldn't last a minute, would he? But drama is about imperfection, and we've moved away from the aspirational hero. We got tired of it, it was dull. If I was House's friend, would hate it. How he so resolutely refuses to be happy or take the kind-hearted road. But we don't always like morally good people, do we? All imperfection is easier to tolerate if served up in small doses. Imperfection is fine. It is imperfection, not perfection, that is the end result of the program written into that formidably complex engine that is the human brain, and of the influences exerted upon us by the environment and whoever takes care of us during the long years of our physical, psychological and intellectual development. Imperfection is perfection. The charge of being ambiguous and indefinite may be brought against every human composition, and necessarily arises from the imperfection of language. Perhaps no two men will express the same sentiment in the same manner and by the same words, neither do they connect precisely the same ideas with the same words. As machines become more and more efficient and perfect, so it will become clear that imperfection is the greatness of man. Catholicism actually resembles a family that survives because even as it aspires to holiness, it understands and can live with sin and imperfection. God is another name for human intelligence raised above all error and imperfection, and extended to all possible truth. At some point, I'm just of the mind that no art is perfect, and it shouldn't be perfect. I think it's beautiful in its imperfection. You could tweak something forever, but you have to let it go and trust it. If you ask people what attracted them to the person they love, they never tell you of some perfect feature that focused them on sheer surfaces but rather an imperfection that allowed them to see into their uncharted depths. Public policy is a study in imperfection. It involves imperfect people, with imperfect information, facing deeply imperfect choices, so it's not surprising that they're getting imperfect results. Visit our website for more quotes, quoting.com.